On Monday morning, we like to start the show with something we fondly refer to as the jargon of the day. This is when we take on one word, one phrase, one acronym. We try to figure out what in the hey nani are those experts talking about. We give you the actual definition first, and then we promptly make as much fun of it as we can muster, because usually that's about all we can do with it, right? And then we give you a working definition, which is a little bit less specific and sometimes makes the experts break out into hives, and that's just a secondary benefit from it, because really the point is to give you a place to begin to understand these terms so that they can help you on your journey, whatever it is. So today's jargon term, boy, did we pick a doozy for today. Operant conditioning. Doesn't that just give you a headache in the frontal lobe? It does me. So let's take a look at what our actual definition is and see if we can't make some fun of this. Operant conditioning, the basic process by which operant learning occurs. Don't you love it when they don't define what operant is, but just use it again? Okay, so again, the basic process by which operant learning occurs, consequences, stimulus changes immediately following responses, result in an increased reinforcement or decreased punishment frequency of the same type of behavior under similar motivational and environmental conditions in the future. I need a chart and a dictionary and a psychologist. The what? And there's a lot of words in there that I understand, and I understand what operant conditioning looks like, and I can't make heads or tails of that definition. So let's move on now to our working definition. Let's see if we can't get a grasp here of what this is. Operant conditioning, a form of learning. Oh, okay, I can get that. Where an individual changes its behavior because of the consequences or results of a behavior. So we talk a lot on the show about a three-term contingency, that in every behavior there's three things that happen. There's something that happens before the behavior, then there's the behavior, and then there's the consequence for the behavior, right? That's nature. That's everything. That's the animal kingdom, that's the plant kingdom, and that is us as human beings. Every behavior that you do starts out with, they call it the antecedent, I call it the ABCs of behavior, right? A for antecedent, B for behavior, C for consequence, ABC, right? Easy to remember. So antecedent is something that happens before, then there's the behavior, and then there's the consequence. This is already, it's in existence. It's just a very structured way of looking at behavior. But you and I and everyone on the spectrum, not on the spectrum, does this a million times a day. The example I always like to use, because we all do this at some point, is that you're sitting somewhere at some point in your day and you get up and turn a light on, right? So that's a three-term contingency. Something happened. Either your eyes began to strain and you couldn't see well enough what you were doing, or you walked in the room and it was dark and you couldn't see and you turned the light on, right? So that's the antecedent. The B was the behavior, but the consequence of turning the light switch on was that light flooded the room. And now you were happier, more comfortable. So operant conditioning takes that three-term contingency and says, if we change the consequence and make it something that's really positive or something that's really negative, then does that change the not necessarily the A, but does it change the behavior? And what I love about the three-term contingency and what I love about ABA for autism is that they have done all the research on it and said, guess what? If we change the consequence and we change it to something positive, that with autism, we absolutely can change behavior. So if we put in a consequence on a regular basis that is something positive and meaningful to that individual, then we can change behavior. Now, why would you want to change behavior? Because there's some behavior that is not useful to an individual. It feels useful to them, it serves a purpose, but it doesn't help them to learn and to grow. So we always say it does have a purpose, right? Even when someone, because we're going to be talking about self-injurious behavior, let's talk about individuals who, for instance, will hit themselves in the head and why that is happening. There is a reason for it. It just isn't functional. It doesn't help them aside from that paycheck that they're getting, that it's meaningful. It's absolutely meaningful, the paycheck, but in the long term, it doesn't help them. And by the way, we all engage in short-term behaviors that feed the short term that don't help us in the long term. That's not just individuals on the autism spectrum, but especially when there are things that get in the way of somebody progressing and it is your child, that is behavior that it's worth looking at. What I love about good quality ABA is that it says they still have to get the paycheck. So whatever the paycheck was for hitting themselves in the head, that need needs to be met. We don't just say, well, let's stop that. We want to feed that behavior in a functional way. Sometimes people will hit themselves in the head because they see colors when they do it, right? Sometimes it will be because they have a pain in their head already, they have a headache, and if they hit their head, there is a momentary cessation of the pain. It goes away for just a second, right? So whatever the reason, we want to give them something that fulfills the need for what the hitting themselves in the head is, that is a more positive consequence than the other. And so we can use operant conditioning. And definitely operant conditioning is used in ABA, but I want to be clear that good quality ABA has said that we will use this, but what works is the positive consequence. So when somebody is working with your child, whether they be a 7-year-old or a 17-year-old or a 27-year-old, they're trying to identify what is meaningful to them and to give them that consequence as a result of doing a certain behavior. And then what we see is that that behavior occurs more often. What? And that's operant conditioning, okay? And if your head doesn't hurt now, don't be afraid if you don't get a jargon term the first time, because we'll talk about it again. And then when you see it, you'll go, oh, it's that thing. It's that thing that they were talking about. Oh, I see. They did that because they got this positive consequence. And then the lights will go off. Hey, thanks for watching Autism Live. To subscribe, click here. And if you'd like to check out some more of our videos, click here.